Arthur Kessler had spent 40 years building the finest clocks in 3 counties, and one October morning, with no warning to anybody, he sat down at his workbench, picked up a pair of jeweler's pliers, and carefully pulled the minute hand off a grandfather clock he'd built with his own hands 15 years back. Set the minute hand down on the bench, neat as you please, next to the tools. Looked at what was left just an hour hand, alone on the face for a long while before he moved on to the next clock in the shop and did the same thing again. I'm Grandpa Ben, folks, and this here's his story. Arthur had learned the trade from his own daddy in a shop that smelled of brass polish and oil, and he'd built his whole reputation on precision. Folks drove 2 hours just to have Arthur fix a family heirloom, because a Kessler clock kept time better than any other in the state, accurate to the second, guaranteed, a promise Arthur had never once broken in 4 decades of work. His whole identity, if you'd asked him straight out, was wrapped up in that precision. A man who could be trusted down to the second. His daughter, Ruth, had grown up in that shop, same as he had in his father's shop before him, surrounded by the tick and chime of 40 clocks, all slightly out of sync. She used to say the place had its own heartbeat. What Ruth didn't know, not for a long while, was how much that heartbeat had started to feel less like music to her father and more like a countdown he couldn't shut off every minute hand in that room, a reminder of exactly how many minutes he had left to fill with something worth the time. The thing that started changing him happened over a stretch of weeks, not all at once, though it looked that way to anybody watching from the outside. His wife, Miriam, had asked him 3 separate times that month to sit with her on the porch after supper, just to talk, no clock in earshot. Every time, Arthur told her, "Give me 20 minutes, I've got a repair due." And every time those 20 minutes stretched into an hour, buried in gears and springs, precision pulling at him harder than his own wife's voice ever seemed to. He started noticing it himself, as the thing started catching himself mid-repair, watching the minute hand crawl and feeling something closer to dread than satisfaction. Couldn't have told you why, not right away. Then came an ordinary Thursday that just happened to be the one that broke something loose. Arthur came out to the porch 2 hours late, repair finished, feeling accomplished about it, and found Miriam had gone up to bed already, porch light off, coffee gone cold on the little table between the 2 chairs. Nothing dramatic happened. Nobody died. Nobody left. That was almost the hardest part. There wasn't a tragedy to point a finger at, just a slow accumulating math of 120 minutes that had quietly added up to something Arthur couldn't get back. He sat alone on that porch a long while, looking at his own watch out of habit, and for the first time in 40 years, hated what it told him. He didn't sleep much that night, and he thought about little else for a couple weeks after the shop. The clocks. What precision had actually bought him, and what it had quietly cost him on the side. Then one morning, without much fanfare, he walked into his shop, sat down at the bench, and started taking the minute hands off, one careful clock at a time. Ruth came in that afternoon to find her father partway down the row of shop clocks, our hands standing alone on face after face. She about had a fit, told him folks were going to think he'd lost his touch. Maybe his mind along with it, a clockmaker, known for precision, deliberately making every clock in his shop less precise. Bad for business, she said. Worse for his reputation. Arthur didn't argue with her, just told her, quiet, Ruthie, I've spent 40 years making sure folks never lost a minute. Never once stopped to ask whether the minutes were the part worth saving. Ruth didn't have much to say back to that. Walked out of the shop more worried than angry. Word got around town quick, the way it does. Most customers who came in that month left without their repairs, not real comfortable trusting a clockmaker who seemed, on the surface, to have stopped caring about the thing he was known for. Arthur lost a good chunk of business over it, plain and simple, and he never fully got all of it back. Some folks just wanted their minute hand, and that was that, and Arthur had made his peace with losing a customer or two over it. But one woman, a widow named Colette, who'd brought in her late husband's mantel clock for a routine cleaning, sat in the shop a long while after Arthur explained what he'd started doing, and asked him to leave hers that way too. Told him she'd spent the 2 years since her husband passed watching that clock's minute hand like it owed her something, counting exactly how much time had gone by since she'd heard his voice. An hour hand, she said, wouldn't let her do that same math, would just tell her, roughly, what part of the day it was, and let the rest of it be hers to feel instead of measure. That conversation did something to Arthur that Ruth's worry hadn't. Didn't stop him second-guessing himself, though there was a rough stretch. About 3 weeks in, money tighter than it'd been in years, where Arthur nearly put the minute hands back on every clock in the shop. Told himself he'd made his point and folks could get back to normal business. Had the pliers back out, hand hovering over that first grandfather clock again, fixing to put it right back the way it was, and stopped, hand shaking a little, thinking about Miriam's cold coffee on that porch table. Set the pliers down, left the clock be. Business never did bounce back to what it was, not exactly, but it settled into something smaller and steadier, a handful of folks like Colette, who understood exactly what they were asking for when they came to Arthur now. And Arthur, for the first time in 40 years, not measuring his worth by how many minute hands he'd fixed that week. As for Arthur and Miriam, he started closing the shop a full hour before he used to, every evening. No repair urgent enough to keep him past it anymore. Sits with her on that porch most every night now, coffee still warm. Says he couldn't tell you exactly what time they usually come in from out there. Says that's rather the whole idea. Now, maybe you don't build clocks for a living, but I'd wager most of you watching this have got a minute hand of your own somewhere in your life, some way you've been counting instead of living. Tell me down in the comments if you pulled the minute hand off just one clock in your life this week. Which one would it be? And if this one found you at the right moment, stick around. Folks, I've got more stories like it every week.